Hey, what's up you guys, The Curious Owl here, and today I have my September 2023 wrap-up. So September was not the most productive of months. I really did struggle for a good portion of the month with my reading, but I did still manage to read quite a bit, so I can't be too mad about that. So let's go ahead and just get into the stats and what I read in the month. So in the month of September, I completed 8 books, which is not bad by any means, and I read a total of 3,479 pages, 0 minutes worth of audiobooks. 5 of the books I read were physical, 3 were ebook, and no audiobooks. 7 of the books I read were from my personal library and only 1 was borrowed. Then in terms of star rating, I had 4 5 stars and I had 4 4 stars. So pretty much split down the middle with like the higher ratings, which is great. Been doing really well so far. I've had very few 3 and 2 and even 1 stars this month. I think that this is the year where I found the most books that I've liked in 1 year compared to any other year I've been on YouTube. Okay, so let's get into the book. So the first one I ended up completing was Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Amelie Wenzhou. This was one of my 23 to read in 2023, and I will say this did take me a long time to read. This was a carryover I had from August, and I ended up loving it. I still loved it every time I went back to it. It just took me a really long time to read it because I had gotten into a bit of a reading slump in August getting into September, but I did finish it and I absolutely loved it. This is a very beautifully written story. It is written so prettily. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It basically follows a girl whose mother she thinks had some kind of magical ability, but she's not really certain of it all, and she knows she has some kind of magic ability, but she's not sure what it is. And when she meets up with this guy who tells her that he could possibly help her with her powers, she joins him to go back to this school that he went to, where it's full of people that used to be a part of these clans that were basically eradicated. This is very much a story similar to like the Poppy War, where it talks about the fact basically where white people came into the land and had basically fucked everything up for everybody else that was already living there, just like white people tend to do. And so this is a story about like colonization and magic and how the colonization of the magic that was done really affected the native people or the indigenous people that were in this world, and how it's basically them taking their power back. Next, speaking of indigenous people, we had an indigenous read this month, which was Warrior Girl Unearthed by Angeline Boulley, and it is the sequel to The Firekeeper's Daughter. This is technically, though, a companion novel, because this does not follow the same character as in The Firekeeper's Daughter. This actually follows her niece, so this takes place more in modern times, and this is following a girl named Perry, who gets involved with this anthropological kind of thing going on, where there are these relics and these like totems of things that people basically are unearthing, and she is trying to bring them back to Sugar Island, where she is from, because they are incredibly important to her culture. And so it's really important for her to try to get these things back, but there are a lot of hoops to jump through, and there's a lot of conspiracy basically going on within the entire anthropological kind of setup, with some colonization basically involved in it. So it's been a struggle. And so then there also is a lot to do with Perry really figuring out what it is that she wants to do with her life, because she also really struggles with figuring out what she wants to do. She's very much a tomboy, never has been into a lot of things like her twin sister has been, so really trying to find her own path while still doing something worthwhile is like a very hard thing for her to deal with. And so that has been something that was like a massive theme throughout the entire book, was her finding herself and figuring out what she wanted to do, as she's about 16 years old in this story. Next, I read Zora Neale Hurston's memoir, Dust Tracks on a Road. Absolutely loved it. Everything nonfiction that Zora writes, I fall in love with. So 5 out of 5 stars. Also gave 5 out of 5 stars to Warrior Girl Unearthed. I don't think I said that. But fantastic, a great memoir that basically outlines her life from when she was a child up to like her like young adult years. Next, I really completed one of the biggest hurdles I have had in reading in a long time, and I'm proud to say that it has changed the pace of this series for me, and that is finally completing Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. Y'all know I have been in a slump with this series for the last year and a half. I finally read the entire 1,000-page plus book, and I will say that I think we finally have gotten over the hump with this series because it was so fun to read. It was actually really interesting, some of the things that developed over the course of this story, that I think that now we are going to be heading uphill when it comes to the rest of the series now that we're in book 7, which is going to be the next one I will read whenever I get the chance. But I'm not necessarily looking like to read it right away, but just whenever it comes up, that's when we'll read it. But very happy that I at least finally got through this one, and I'm now over that hump because it was going to be a long time if I hadn't started it now before I would get to it. But I did give this a 4 out of 5 stars. Obviously, some things were not 100% what I wanted it to be. I felt like there were definitely some really slow parts that I kind of was like, ugh, can we move on, please? But overall, not too bad. Next book I read was Dawn by Octavia E. Butler. This is the first book in the Lilith's Brood series, or the Xenogenesis trilogy. This is more of a sci-fi story. I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars because the whole thing from beginning to end was so captivating. It is following a young woman who basically you learn is taken in by this alien race, and they are looking to use her as a way to bring humans over to the alien side and allow the aliens to basically use them as like reproductive fodder of sorts. And essentially Earth has basically been wiped out completely. The surviving humans that were there were taken in by these Ukali, and it's a ride. It is a ride of a story. It has got amazing, like, slight Hunger Games vibes at some point. I don't know how, but it did. And just, wow. This was just beyond what I expected. I had no idea what to expect with this series. I didn't know it had anything to do with aliens, but I was floored. And I really, really am excited for Adulthood Rights, which is book 2. I have no idea what's going to go on with that one, but I love Lilith so much. Lilith is amazing. Also, I forgot to mention, Dust Tracks on a Road, Lord of Chaos, and Dawn were all books that were also on my Wheel of D20 reads. Lord of Chaos was for my lower priority wheel, Dawn was for my backlist read, and Dust Tracks on a Road was for my standalone, taking place of my Zora Neale Hurston read for the month of September, as I could not get it, which was Seraph on the Suwannee, so Dust Tracks on a Road ended up taking over that spot. My next read was also one of my Wheel of D20 reads for middle grade, which was The Icebound Land by John Flanagan. Now, this is the 3rd book in the Ranger's Apprentice series, and I was kind of shocked with how this one was. It wasn't as good as I feel like the rest of the books were. I still gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because overall I really liked a lot of the premise, especially with Hort and with Horace. I feel like Horace is always going to be a character I'm going to love as like a best friend, side character kind of thing. Like, he's just the sweetest kid. But like, the main character, Will, he gets captured at the very beginning of this story after this big battle with Lord Morgareth, and he and Evelyn, another character that comes up in the series, they get captured and put into slavery. And so like, for most of the story, you don't see them much at all. And it's kind of bizarre because everybody's like either trying to keep him or go after him, and then there's other things politically that are going on in this world that like is kind of bizarre. Horace becomes this whole like amazing knight that everybody wants to fight with, and it's like just so fun. But I was kind of disappointed with the fact that we didn't really get to see much of Will in this, and I was really kind of thinking that that was my biggest gripe with the whole thing. But overall, still really enjoyed it. I love Horace. He is my favorite. He is my #1 favorite, like, best friend character so far. Besides Shane from Morganville Vampires. Shane's a really good one. I had my final Wheel of D20 read, which was to do a random TBR draw, and that was Curses in Thunder by Abigail Gaisford, I think. This was fine. It was pretty good. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's hard to kind of explain this one, but like, the main thing is at the very beginning of the story, you find out that there's this character named Jasmine who basically is this queen in this world of Briarwood, something like that. I think it's Briar something. But she is a queen in this world, and she's been looked at to be married off. But you learn very, very early on, like in the first chapter, her best friend that she's had since childhood had passed away, and there was kind of this maybe relationship with her. And all because of a curse that was placed on this kingdom when Jasmine was very young, which took the lives of many people, including Jasmine's mother and father and her best friend. And so there's a lot riding on Jasmine to do the right thing and to do something that's going to ultimately break the curse, supposedly, on this kingdom. But it's also really hard for her. And so there's a lot of trigger warnings, I think, with grief, and especially death of a friend and death of a maybe lover kind of thing. But it's one of those things where, like, it was so heartbreaking to read from Jasmine's perspective about why she was so afraid of going through this. But I think it was just even more heartbreaking to witness, you know, how that affected everybody else as well, and how that struggle of doing what's right versus for everyone else and being selfless as opposed to, you know, being selfish, and this thing too of not feeling like you are doing something that you feel is 100% right to you in your heart of hearts. You know, it's a real struggle. And so I really appreciated the way that this story was written, because I feel like it really hit the nail on the head with a lot of things that I think need to be addressed when it comes to any situation like this in general. And then the final book that I basically started but didn't quite finish and I'm working on right now is The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. This was my N.K. Jemisin read for the month of September. I am already over halfway through this right now, so I'm gonna finish it here in like the next little bit, probably tomorrow after I'm filming this. So this is following basically a city called Gujarat, which is very much ancient Egyptian inspired. And the whole thing is peace is the only law that's allowed in this world. And so there's basically people who go off and kill people, like there are hired assassins that go off and kill people that are threatening peace in this world. And essentially there's a conspiracy where one of the most famous gatherers or assassins, Ahiru, is basically being questioned for everything that is going on in this world, because apparently it's very likely he could like be the scapegoat for a lot of what's going on and all of the damage that's going on in this world. So I'm only halfway through it at this point, like I said, but I'm really enjoying it a lot. I'm very excited to see how everyone else thinks of it, because from what I understand, this duology, the Dreamblood duology, is one of N.K. Jemisin's least liked series, and so I'm curious to know as to why. I so far have found nothing that I dislike. I just wonder if maybe it's less of people don't like it as much as it is they just don't think it's as good as like the Broken Earth trilogy or the 100,000 Kingdoms series. So I don't know, that's kind of where my thoughts are at this point, but I'm gonna have all my information for that in the vlog, which should be coming out here in the next couple of days. But without further ado, those are all of the books I ended up reading in the month of September. Again, not too much, but definitely more than I thought I was going to, considering the first 2 weeks of the month I was in a reading slump. So not bad. Not bad by any means. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlette in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!